So this will be the second sign I have used a router to carve, but this is the first time I have ever worked with or used epoxy resin at all. So with a piece of hobby pine board I had left over from building my parents' coat rack, I set about cutting it roughly in half and then cleaned up all 4 long sides of the boards before gluing and clamping it up. I did also clamp a flat piece of wood across the 2 pieces to stop them bowing up whilst gluing. Next, I printed out my channel's logo on some sheets of A4 paper and then set about lining them up and taping them together. I also trimmed off the excess paper and then stuck it down. When it came to carving the logo, I put down masking tape first, then using spray adhesive to stick the logo on top. This way, when I finished carving, I could just peel the tape off and not have to do any clean-up work. This is something I learned from last time. So then I set about using the router to carve out all the parts of the logo. I did carve the saw blade slightly deeper than the rest of the logo because I wanted to fill this up with the blue resin and have it ever so slightly lower from the surface than the rest of the resin to give it an overall 3D effect. However, as you'll see later on in the project, this wasn't possible. Now unfortunately I did notice this when I was raising it, the part of the A actually broke. It is just holding on, so I'll have to break that off and then clean this all up and glue it back into place somehow. So it's now the next day and I've moved into my kitchen. I let these 2 little bits that I repaired glue up overnight. The A's repaired quite well.
The S was repaired really well. You wouldn't notice. I had to put a tiny little bit of filler in there, but nothing major. The part of the A is not quite in position, but it still looks like an A. Now I've masked these bits up because I'm actually going to pour some resin in here now. So I've no idea if this is going to work or not. Hopefully it does. I don't have resin dyes. I'm going to be using this Rust-Oleum acrylic paint, because I did read that you could use acrylic paint. So I've got the resin. So I'll mix them up and then we'll start pouring. Now unfortunately, with my novice approach to this, we've had a few leaks along the way. When I went over with the blowtorch, it shrunk the duct tape that I put here and here that was up until that point stopping anything leaking out. It's made it contract and now it's leaked out. So I've dammed it up here, dammed it there and there. So hopefully we won't get any more leakage. Might just have to clean it up with the router again. Might just have to go around and clean it up, but it's not the end of the world.
When the blue coloured resin had almost set, I was able to use a scraper and remove the resin that had leaked out, and then pour the silver resin. I overfilled the silver resin because as the resin dries it contracts and shrinks slightly, and I didn't want the level of it to go beneath the wood. So while I left the resin to set and leak out, I made a start on the frame. I had a few offcuts of wood left over with a rabbet joint already cut into them from my Plinko bottle top build. So it was really just a matter of cutting the motor onto them and shaving them down to the required width. So then it moved on to the sanding. I started off with the belt sander using 80 grit. Then using the random orbital sander, I moved on to 150, 240, 320, finally up to 400 grit. As you can see here, this time some of the silver had leaked out onto the blue. So I got out an artist paintbrush, and using the blue paint I used to mix the resin, I just touched it up a little until it wasn't visible anymore.
So once the top coat of epoxy had dried, I decided to paint the frame in this grey emulsion and give it a couple of coats of lacquer to help the sign stand out. So now we've moved back into my kitchen and I'm going to pour some epoxy resin on the top as a final coat. I've masked up underneath everywhere so I shouldn't get any leakage, and I've used an online calculator to work out how much epoxy resin I need. It came out at 180 ml, so I've mixed exactly 180 ml, so hopefully I have enough. So once the top coat of epoxy had dried, I decided to paint the frame in this grey emulsion and give it a couple of coats of lacquer to help the sign stand out. So with the few problems I had along the way of doing this, I don't know whether to class it as a success or a fail, because the main thing I wanted from this sign was to have a 3D effect, and because I had to sand this part of the sign so much to colour in the bits that it bled on, you've not got 3D effect on it. So although the sign as a whole has come out looking quite good, I think, it's not the 3D effect one that I wanted. So I think I'll just have to go back to the drawing board and revisit this at a later date and see if I can improve on it. Anyway, if you liked the video, thanks for watching. Please give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, give me a thumbs down. Please share and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again.